Hi everyone, it's Nicole from Be So Creative, and I am so excited to be here for Wednesday workshops. I'm going to show you how to line a tote bag. So what I have today, we've got a Kimberbell blank tote bag. They come in this dark denim color, they come in chambray, buffalo check, lots of great colors, and they're great for embroidering a design on because it's a flat blank. So the edges are serged, it's really easy to hoop, and when you're ready to finish it, all you have to do is fold it wrong sides together and sew your seams, and you don't have any raw edges. But sometimes when we do embroider on these or embellish them, you could do applique, buttons, you could do yo-yo flowers, but once we've embellished them, sometimes we don't want to see all of the stitches on the inside of the bag. So we want to line it, or we just want to add our favorite fabric inside. We may just want to line it for extra durability. So I'm going to show you a really easy way to do this. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open your tote, and you're going to want to do some measurements. You want to see how long it is, and then you want to see how wide it is. And you want to cut your lining fabric to be the same width. So from here to here, and mine was 17 inches. And the length, you want to do it the length plus 1 inch. And I'll show you why we have that extra 1 inch. So I have already prepped my fabric. I've cut this really cute red bicycle fabric that we have here in the shop. And so what we want to do is we want to sew a side seam. We're going to fold it in half, and we're going to want to sew a side seam on our lining. And we just want to go down both of the sides, and we're going to do a 1/2 inch. And the reason why we do a 1/2 inch is just for extra durability. So I'm going to take this lining to the machine and get that sewn up. And I am going to reduce my stitch length just a little bit. I just feel for extra durability that it just kind of helps things. And I am going to backstitch at the beginning and at the end. Again, this is a tote bag. We do want it to be extra durable, and adding those back stitches really help with durability. So I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other side here. I'm going to backstitch. And we're just going to zip all the way down this side. And so I've already made a tote bag. I've already embroidered on a tote bag. So we're going to put this one aside. But I've already embroidered. I use this really cute design. It's from Kimberbell Red, White, and Bloom. So we have our flag. I used some leather and glitter. And I did box the corners on this. And so boxing the corners is totally optional. But if you choose to do that on your tote bag, you're going to need to do that on your lining. So we're going to set our tote bag aside because he's just ready to be lined. And we are going to work on our lining. So I've already sewed my seams, and I'm going to show you how we would box those corners. So let me flip it towards me. This up here is our open side. We're not going to do anything with that. To box our corners, we are going to measure, basically what you want to do is you want to measure the same distance from the seam and the bottom. So for the tote bag, I did 1 3/4 inches. So I have my handy Creative Grids ruler, and I love these little stickers we have here at the shop. I believe they're a GE product, and I love using them to mark my ruler so I don't get confused. So I am aligning my 1 3/4 from my seam line, not from the edge of my fabric, and this one from my bottom fold. And I have a clover chalk pin. I love these to mark. They come in white, for your darker fabrics and a gray for your lighter fabrics. And Stephanie here had told me a wonderful trick about mixing those two powders, the white and the gray, to get a nice light silver that she kind of uses for everything. So again, I'm matching, aligning that 1 3/4 on the bottom and on the side. And I'm just going to make a mark on both of these so I can cut those out. And I'm lining it to my seam, not the edge of my fabric. Once I have those boxed corners marked out, I'm just going to cut them out. We want to cut both of them out. And that will give us, it basically boxing a corner, it adds some depth to your bag. Of course, it does take a little bit of the height away, but it adds some nice depth so you can put some thicker things there. So one thing that I like to do is I'm going to kind of do a finger press right at this corner and right at this corner. And what that's going to help me do is align my edges. So people do box corners. There's a couple different methods. This is my favorite because I feel I can get some better control when I'm matching up. So where I just finger pressed it, I want to match that up right with my, my bottom seam. And I want that to get nice and flat. I'm going to pop a couple pins in there, and then we're going to take that to the sewing machine and sew that shut, again using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. When you're doing bag making, it's a little bit more durable. So I'll show you that box corner again. So I'm putting a nice little finger crease in there, and then I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to match that finger crease, that little press that I put in there, with my, my side seam. And I'm going to pop a couple pins in there. I love these Tula Pink unicorn pins, super fun. Oop, and I moved it. So I want to make sure everything is nice and flat. So that's aligned nicely, that's aligned nicely. And then we're going to take it to the machine and we're going to sew our seam allowance so we can have those nice box corners. There we go. And just like we did before, we're going to do some back stitching. We want our bag not to fall apart on us when we're carrying, whatever heavy loads you might have. We just want everything to be nice and sturdy for us. So there is one box corner. We're going to do the exact same thing to the other side that we pinned. And we don't sew over our pins. We always want to remove those. That will just help your machine stay happy. I am using 1/2 inch seam allowances again. That's just going to help keep our bag sturdy. Of course, in quilting, we all know we use a 1/4 inch seam. In bag making, lots of times we're going to use a 1/2 inch just for the sturdiness of the bag. So the next thing that we're going to do is we want to have a finished edge on the top. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to fold this down about 1/2 inch. And you can eyeball it, or we have this really great tool, the hot ruler. And let me pop this open and I'll show you how we're going to use him to help get some really nice seams here. So when you first open your tool, it's going to come in a plastic covering. So of course you want to take that off before you use him. But I love this ruler. It really can help you get just perfect seam allowances when you are ironing. So I'm going to lay this down and I'm going to line it to the 1/2 inch mark. And this is why I had said it was really important to measure your tote. This was 1 inch longer because we needed to accommodate for the seam allowances. So I'm just going to press this down and I'm going to do that. Oop, have some plastic here. We don't want to melt that. I'm just going to do this all along my entire tote. And I'm right-handed, so ironing left-handed is a little tricky here. So we are just going to, let me move some things aside. We should be using our handy dandy pressing mat. So as I press this down, I'm just going to keep doing this all along all of the edges of my tote bag. Let me grab this. And so I'm doing this on the wool mat, but at home, it's probably going to be a little bit easier to use the edge, the small side of your ironing board to help you just get everything nice and perfect and not iron on top of the layers. You can just slide this right up against the edge of your ironing board and get it nice and pressed. So once you kind of get a few presses down, you'll notice most of it just kind of folds. It just wants to fold because you've kind of trained it and you've showed it where to go. So we're probably on our last little bit. I'm going to stick my tool right under here, measuring my 1/2 inch. And that is just going to give us a clean finish when we pop this inside our tote bag. So now that that's nice and pressed, we have everything nice and crisp, and actually that one isn't nice and crisp, so I'm going to hit it with the iron. And you might want to put a little bit of starch if you're having some problems with it staying. So here's where the magic happens. I have my tote bag. I'm going to pop this inside my tote bag, wrong sides together. So leaving this open, and I want to match my box corners and my side seams. So right here I have my side seam. I'm just going to match that. And you can pop a pin in it, or a clover clip is really nice. And I'm going to pin my side seams first. If I can find my other side seam, there it is. And for the tote bag, I did press these open. It just helps you have a little less bulk going on in there. So once you have those side seams, I like to then go and do the middle. And I'm going to line it up just right under. I don't want it peeking out. If you did, you certainly could line it above. That would be really cute as well. But I'm going to line mine up just a titch under there. And so also at this point, it would be, it's good to note that I'm going to sew using a red bobbin because I want it to match the lining of my tote. And I'm also, you could change your thread to blue, to match your tote, or you could always change it to a fun color. I think I'm going to leave mine red and have a nice little detail. So I'm just starting, I pin the outsides, and then I pin the middle, and then I'm going to pin the next section. That just helps line up everything really nicely. So at this point, I will mention if your lining seems a little big, so mine's fitting in here nicely. If your lining seems a touch big, that just means that your seams, they weren't quite exact. That happens. So an easy thing to do is you could actually pop the lining in before you box the corners and kind of pull it, stretch it out, make sure everything lines up. If it doesn't line up at that point, it would be really easy to put your lining back under your sewing machine and take a slightly deeper inseam. So maybe you did 1/2 inch and things were a little bit big. You could go back and do, move your needle position over 1. Now I'm just going to stitch all the way along the top. I am going to use my edge stitch foot just so it aligns everything nicely, and then we will have a fully lined tote. So one thing I love about our edge stitch foot is it has a little blade, and that's really going to help us keep everything aligned. So we're going to change that out. And at this point, I am also going to free my foot because I have, or my pedal, I've successfully got it stuck here. Of course, y'all, that's going to happen because it's been one of those mornings. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off my sliding tray. That's just going to help me fit this on better. And if you have a machine with dual feed, at this point, I would engage that as well. If you don't have dual feed, a walking foot would be helpful just to help all of these layers move together evenly. So I've told my machine that I have my dual feed on, and I like to start at one of the side seams because I am going to backstitch, and so I do want to kind of hide that. So lower my foot, and I'm going to move my needle position in a little bit to give me just a nice seam allowance. And that dual feed is what's helping move all of those layers nicely through. Again, a walking foot would do the very similar thing, just help feed all of those layers nice and even. And so when you get to the handle, you might have an issue. So my blade, it's catching on the handle. So I need to ever so slightly lift my foot. If you have the knee lift, that is a perfect tool to help you. And that's going to help you go smoothly over those handles. So just be aware you're going to have to lift it just a touch so you can get over those handles with ease. And again, removing my pins over, the tech guys let us know that that is best practice not to sew over pins. So again, I'm getting to this handle. I'm going to slow down, lift my foot up so that blade can run nice and smoothly over that handle. Removing my pins before I get to them. And you can see it gets a little bulky when we get to the edge, so we'll just take it slow. And my lining is starting to peek out a little bit. So at this point, you can just kind of adjust it. Oh, that unicorn's getting stuck. So we're just gonna keep going again, coming to a handle. So I'm gonna slow down a little bit, smooth everything out. And it helps when you're going around to kind of pull your bag out here. You don't want it bunched behind the machine. This just helps make sure everything is nice and taut as it's going through the machine. Again, removing the pins as we get to them. We don't want to sew over them and cause issues. So last handle, I am smoothing it out. I'm slowing down, lifting up that foot, and just it goes over nice and smooth. And we're to the finish line. So I like to trim this little extra thread before I get it. It just helps make sure nothing gets tangled. And I'm going to kind of tuck that in. And so at this point, I've made sure everything lined up, and I'm going to backstitch just a touch. We're going to cut our thread, and that's it. You have successfully lined a tote bag. So now we have our tote bag fully lined. When you open it, we don't see any of that stitching. We don't see stabilizer. We just see a nicely lined tote bag. So thank you so much for joining us. There is a downloadable tutorial that will give you all of the steps, and it has pictures and it has all of the measurements. So it works great for these Kimberbell totes, but it's going to work great for any tote bag that you have. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day.